Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of the Linux Crew. And I'm joined today by Gavin. Gavin is a fantastic guy. If you haven't seen any of his videos, they're actually informative and educational, unlike my stupid videos. So definitely, I will remember to put links in the description. Of course, I said so. Just for anyone who heard that loud thumping, that was Buddy, my dog, saying hi. I knew he was not going to be nice this time around, but we we honestly haven't gotten to have a one-on-one conversation, just me and you. I think the only times that we've ever talked, it's been with a group of other people, and so it's about time that we get to talk. Uh,
Yeah, man.
so
I'm pretty excited.
I do have to ask, what is your channel about for anyone who doesn't know?
That's like a pretty fair question. I don't really have a good way to describe it because mostly I just talk about geeky, usually Linux or open source related stuff that I'm interested in. I usually try to make my videos like semi informative. I try to do my research on them. So if
Well,
you kind of like,
you do a good job of making them informative. I will go ahead and say that.
so yeah, if the sort of the idea of like looking at, I don't know, most of the stuff that I talk about is just like either software or like, I don't know, I'm really into like programming related things. So I often talk about that sort of stuff. So if that interests you at all, I try not to make it too high level of like expectations or like expecting that you've watched all my videos.
No.
Long explanation to say basically nothing about my channel.
I feel very good about putting someone else on the spot like that. I've had that happen to me multiple times where people are like, describe your channel, and you're like, shit. um, I talk about open source stuff. Like it's the hardest thing describing your channel because you're like, I talk about what I'm interested in. Like it's the hardest question to answer, but then also at the same time, I like asking it because then you'll find that one person who is like, I've been prepped and ready for this question. Like, thank you for asking. But
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
so when it comes to YouTube and and everything that you're about, we all have channels that we all like to treat with a little bit of, I don't know, it's weird. Like you don't want to make your channel, your content, like profession. I don't know how to say it, like, a production, but you also want to treat it like, with some quality. And that's kind of what I like about the whole idea of this series here, where we're cutting back, we're just gonna relax and have a good conversation and talk about what's interesting for us. Um, which it kind of it's kind of a thing, for at least for me, like the way that I think about it, it's like, just slow down, don't take yourself too seriously. Let's just have a good time. So in that vein, what have you been working on, interested in here real lately?
Probably like the one thing I've done a lot is just like playing around with like I recently like got or somewhat recently got super into like playing around with like functional programming stuff, which is like, I don't know, kind of related to the programming thing I was talking about before. I've mostly been playing around with like Lisps because I started using like well, I got into Lisp like a while ago, and so because of that I've like looked at like a bunch of Lisp related tools. If you know what I'm talking about, it's basically just like, I don't know if you know, let me know if you know what I'm talking about when I say Lisp.
I know what you're talking about when you say Lisp. However,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, average
don't
person.
know any Lisp tools. Have no
Yeah.
idea.
So I guess like really the big reason that I was like interested in it was because I like started playing around with like I guess I played around with Emacs, but honestly at the time when I tried it out the first time, I genuinely was just like, this is awful. uh, and I started just like playing around with like there's like Lisp is basically the idea of it is just there's like the simple it's a very simple language. There's a lot of different versions of it, which is why getting into it's like kind of confusing for a lot of people. But anyways, the idea of like the language is that it's like very simple. It's just kind of awkward at the first time when you look at it.
Mhm.
Um, I'll try not to get like too into details because I don't want to like
Oh,
drive
dude,
the
like
conversation.
if it's what you're interested in, dive into details. So
But
also,
anyways,
when I don't understand something, I will ask and be like, okay, explain that.
but the big reason that I wanted to try and like look into tools that used Lisp is because like probably the most common wow, this is gonna sound really silly. The most commonly used Lisp is Common Lisp is what it's called, and then there's like Scheme, which is kind of like a bit more of like a I don't know, it's more big brain if you will. Like Common Lisp is like it's kind of like people like took the idea of Lisp and they just like put a lot of things into it. So because of that, it's like super messy to like get into because it's like really there's just a lot to look at.
Mhm.
And then Scheme is kind of just like very, very simple. Like you can learn pretty much most of what you'd learn in Scheme in like 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Versus like you can't really do that for pretty much any other language. Uh,
That's
besides
kind
maybe
of
something like
incredible. Incredible? What the hell was that?
incredible.
Incredible. Yeah. So you can learn it in 30 minutes?
Pretty much. Like literally the idea of it is basically like yeah, the concepts are like very simple. Basically, like in most languages, there's a lot of different data structures. I don't really know if you've done. I guess if you've like used like Bash, Bash has like arrays and stuff, um, or like the kind of concept of like new lines in a file or something like that. And so, basically, all Lisps follow this concept of like the only data structure that you have is a list, quote unquote. And a list is basically just a bunch of like these things called con cells, which is basically like say for example, I have like if I wanted to make a list of things, I'd have one thing, and so like I find that one thing, and then it points to another thing, and so that's basically like a connection of things that are all connected, and so a con cell is basically a pair, like a pair of things, and so one pair that connects to another pair that connects to another pair creates a list, and so because of that, you can represent a lot of. This is like, let me know if this sounds like crazy.
No. I'm keeping up. Yeah.
But that's basically the concept of it. And so a list is represented as basically like two parentheses. And so that's basically the concept of a list. A list is that it's basically two parentheses and then something, a space, something like any amount of white space. So it's like very simple. And that something can be like anything. It could be a number, it could be a word. And so that's basically all a list is basically two parentheses. And then the actual construct of the language, like if you've ever, like you knew like a function or a command or anything like that, is actually also a list. Is kind of the cool thing about it. So instead of it being, so this is kind of like what they call like, oh God, what's it called? It's like homoiconicity is like something that people love to say.
Never heard that word
It
before.
sounds scary. Yeah, people say that about Lisp as like a thing that people like say, but it just sounds scary when you hear it because it's just like I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But basically, the idea is that if I wanted to say like like a command on the command shell, say if I wanted to do grep this file, I would do the equivalent of that would be like the command grep and then this file. And so to represent the equivalent of that in something like Lisp, where the command would be like a function, I would have a parentheses grep, and then its arguments would all fall inside of that other parentheses. And so because of that, you basically get this is like a function. It's the function arguments all go inside of parentheses. And then if I wanted to represent a list, I would use the same thing, but I would use something called like quoting, which basically means do not evaluate this. Don't treat this parentheses as a function. Just take that and store it as like this abstract set of like symbols basically, and then that later on can be like you can pull apart a list, you can look at each section of a list, but because of that basically like oh my God, this is so hard to explain and like just like with a screen, but
Yeah.
the concept of that is that you basically end up with the actual like function itself or anything like that could just be represented as a list, and so in the end you don't actually have to worry about like things like say for example like if you ever had a command that calls another command and you have to like deal with the hell of like unquoting things and stuff. That's just like not a thing because you just say never evaluate this. Don't even worry about what this is. And so then you could do crazy stuff like you could have functions that build other functions and then return other functions. Just with like a very simple idea of don't evaluate this and then evaluate it when you want to evaluate it.
I like that concept. That's a beautiful. That's a beautiful concept for a language where all of the complexity of the language all has to come out of just the simplicity of it. Like
Yeah.
that's
Like if you
really
can
great.
understand the concept of it, like once you get your head wrapped around it, it's very like simple in that way. And so the cool thing about this idea of like it all being contained in these parentheses is that it works well for like if you ever use like a REPL, like bash, for example, is basically a REPL for commands. Like
What
read.
is a REPL?
Yeah, so REPL stands for read eval print loop. So you have like a reader, which would be like your shell, like bash. So you've got bash open, and you say grep these things like we were talking about before. Well, it reads that, it evaluates that, which would just be executing the commands, and then it prints the output, and then it loops back to let you insert new information. So it's basically what a REPL is. And so a REPL isn't specific to like bash or anything. You know, there's like ZSH and stuff. Or if you've ever ran, like if you just run the command Python, it'll like start a REPL itself where you can evaluate Python code. And so Lisp lends itself very well to a REPL because basically it's not like Python where it's got like this indentation structure, and everything's just contained in parentheses. So if you just copy the parentheses over, you can evaluate it really easily.
The dog one
And so
in the
because of this,
background.
yeah, and so because of this, it's like known for being used for things like runtime programming, which is basically so like the really cool thing that I'm playing around with right now is there's a web browser called Nixt, and because of this, you can basically like customize it and change how the program works while it's running, which is something that basically is like I don't know unheard of in most other languages. And it's like super useful for like big projects like a web browser. Like, do you really want to like recompile your web browser every time you want to customize it?
Hell no. Hell no.
Yeah, and then there's the extent of like you can kind of do this with other things like Qt browser, for example, is a good example of something that does this with Python. But Python doesn't really lend itself to like interactive programming because of the way it's structured, and it doesn't really have that idea of quoting in the same way. This is like a bit too much, but that's kind of like the cool idea of it, and so that's kind of like where a lot of people see the appeal in Emacs is like in Vim you can like theoretically do the same sort of things, but in Vim it's kind of annoying because a lot of people like get really annoyed with like closing Vim all the time and restarting it because it's not really geared very well towards programming it at runtime. A lot of package or plugins don't really like the idea of being loaded multiple times. They break themselves. But with Emacs, you just never restart it. Like if you want to change something about how it works, just change it while it's running. And so that's kind of how it's applied to like everything. Like my window manager right now is handled that way as well. But yeah, so that's kind of what I do.
So I do have a question. So you're an Emacs user, and so the window manager that you're using, is it the Emacs one?
No, I used to use EXWM though. But there's like it's got some weird issues with like focus where like you can't put two X windows next to each other, otherwise it like freaks out. Or it used to. I don't know if that's still a thing. But that kind of like got me not to really, and also like having like I don't know, Emacs doesn't really crash very often, but like sometimes things like take a long time. And so basically hanging your entire window manager for something like, I don't know, like for example, there's a thing called Tramp, which allows you to like connect through SSH and basically use like your entire editor setup without having to like, I don't know if you ever SSH into servers.
Yeah.
If you've ever done that, you usually just use like VI, but you lose out on like a lot of like the extra functionality. So say if you wanted to work with like a bigger project, like for work I have to work with like remote servers every once in a while, and we have like big projects, and then I like need to debug, figure out what's going wrong. And so like having to just do that through VI in like a big project would be, I don't know, kind of hell. Yeah, like we have like for example, like one of our projects has like 6,000 files on it. Like I can't imagine like grepping something like that for like a specific function would just like take forever, and it would just be like a total mess. You'd just see like so much output and you'd have no idea what you're looking at. And so that's kind of where like Tramp's useful for. But because it's like connected through SSH, sometimes things are like a bit slow. And if your entire window manager hangs because you're trying to open a file, like I don't know, that's kind of just like a pain.
Kind of unacceptable.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I stopped using that. Like right now I just use Stump WM, which is kind of like similar. It's like inspired by Emacs, and it's like if you know Rat Poison, it's very similar to Rat Poison.
Your video, like I am right. You put out a video on Stump WM not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I put it out like last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. It was really good. I had to make sure because I started remembering that and I was like, okay, don't be an idiot here and talk about him posting a video that he never posted. Like,
No, that's fair.
I do
I
that
wouldn't be
all the
too.
time. Like I'll associate a video with someone completely different, and then I'm talking with them about it. They're like, yeah, I never did that. I'm like, "Oops." But
It's at
yeah,
least a bit easier for me. I don't release too many videos as often as some of the other guys do. I don't have that intense output that some people do.
well, I
Which
mean,
just astounds me that people can do it.
the only reason I can put out so many videos, and really my thing is live streaming. I spend a lot of time live streaming. Only reason I can do that is because I have so much free time. I mean, Doc, if you've got a lot of stuff going, especially full time job and then family life, especially now around the holidays. Man, it
Yeah.
is hard to have time for any. Making a video a day is practically impossible with that.
Yeah. Like I can't even imagine. I don't know how like people like Casey Neistat can release like this crazy amount of output.
Yeah.
Like when he used to like do like when he used to like release like pretty high quality vlogs like once a day, like that's insane.
Yeah.
Like even like because like people don't even consider like the idea of like also that stuff like takes time to render on top of that, and like you actually have to like obviously like a vlog is like pretty different from having like an actual concept to like talk about, but like you still have to sit down and like edit all that shit. Like
Well, I mean, you got to record it, edit it, like then you got to make the thumbnails, you got to fill out the tags, upload. Like there is so much. I understand the argument of like, look, you're doing something that you like, so you shouldn't complain. I definitely understand that. However, I also disagree with the mindset of it's like there's no effort involved in it at all. Like I feel like a lot of people have that mindset. It's like, dude, you have no idea the amount of time that your favorite creators, if they're putting out a video every single day, they are spending a large portion of their time editing. A large
yeah,
portion. And there
yeah, man.
also comes with the community management side of it too, which is also like that takes time. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it
that's
depends
like
on what
I
you
don't
do.
blame like people like DT where it's like I can't manage Discord servers and stuff because I'm releasing videos constantly. It's like pretty understandable.
Exactly. Well, that, and I mean, also for a time, I mean, for a good few months, he didn't have a computer at home, so he could only do anything when he was at the office. So, I mean,
Oh yeah, I forgot he got like an office and stuff. That's pretty
yep,
crazy. That's
hmm
wild.
yeah,
The
yeah,
creator scene is really moving up.
yep. Well, I, I think it is genuinely a good thing that we like as a community are growing in popularity. It's it's very refreshing and also exciting because the amount of information that is available for tools for Windows and stuff and Mac is kind of what make those tools excel. And the fact that we now have more and more people highlighting, making tutorials or whatever, showing off how to functionally use FOSS software in a productive environment. Very good, very exciting. And
Yeah, man. I feel like that's like one of the things that I feel like when I first started my channel, I was like very adamant about not making videos on a tool that I won't use. Because a lot of my videos are on like a tool or like a concept or something like that. And so I don't want to make like a video on like a concept that I don't really think I'll ever actually use.
you know,
And I still kind of do that. But like there are some things where like a project, the only reason I wouldn't use a project is because the project isn't very actively developed. But a few of them that have like kind of started to seem like they were going to die off, but I made a video on them anyways, have like gained like a lot of, not a lot of popularity, have gained like more developers and everything like that since I've made the video as like a response. Like a good example is like K Monad is like if you guys have ever wanted to have like a very customizable keyboard setup that works any like on any operating system. It works on Mac, it works on Linux, it works on Windows. I don't know if it works on BSD. I would assume it might. Probably not actually, because it works on like a lower level. So it also works on like a TTY. Anyway, so it's a really cool project. I recommend checking it out if that interests you guys. But Kmonad was like a really cool project, but the developer got like really sick, and so he couldn't really support it. but I decided I'd make a video on it anyways, and now it's getting like very like fairly active development now,
That's
which is nice.
awesome.
It's good to see that like the video that you make makes a difference.
Yeah.
Um,
That, I mean, to me, I think it was crazy. Like, I made my OpenBSD, like, I made some OpenBSD content before any of the big other, like, Linux creators, like Mental Outlaw and everybody started doing um,
yeah,
OpenBSD videos. And those, like, they had already done extremely well. Like, for some reason, OpenBSD, which is even more niche, did so well. And the video that I did, or live stream where I talked about installing it, I ended up, it got shared around the video, like that live stream apparently caught somebody in the OpenBSD community's attention, and there was an article posted about my video that I did the next day, and that ended up like getting the guy who, or whoever was over the AMD drivers, ended up like working on the 5700 XT, like making sure that it was like perfectly functional, because I was having issues, like not bad issues, but it wasn't working the way that it should, if it was actually being detected properly. But yeah, they got that fixed. That was incredible. And I was also like, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's very nice to see that when you make videos that it at people who actually are really interested in the subject that you're talking about watch it. Like, that's the fun part. Um,
yeah.
like, I don't know how much this is true, but I think a lot of developers watch more YouTube than people think. Like, I feel like a lot of us have probably had some of the project's developers, or at least contributors, watch videos, and that sometimes makes me a little nervous to know how many
Yeah,
projects I've covered.
you're definitely right. Like, I think like the majority of projects that I've talked about, like I usually don't talk about, I don't know, I talk about like somewhat smaller projects or something like that usually, or like projects that aren't, I usually try not to make a video on a topic that's already been covered on YouTube.
Which
Unless it's
is
like, I don't know,
difficult.
unless I just think it's like very, just a kind of inaccurate video or something like that,
Mm.
which sometimes is like the case. But I find that like a lot of those like get comments from the creator that just say like, "Oh my God, someone's like looking at my project," or like they link to your video in their GitHub page or their website, or they just like give you feedback, which I always appreciate. I
Yeah.
always like it when I try to be as accurate as I can, but sometimes you don't know everything.
Yeah, yeah. And
Or
to
like the state
to
of the project is like hard to keep track of.
yeah, to me, what I always like is those comments where they get really upset that you like got something wrong, and it's like, thank you. I know I did that. It's like, I think it's funny that people imagine that like we have to edit the video, and so by the time you're done editing the video, you, even though you've seen it, when you post that video, you know good and well that there's something that you could have done better, or there's something that you missed. Like, in every video. Like,
Oh yeah, man.
I don't understand the people who get upset about it, because like, essentially, like, there's no reason to get upset, because I know that I could have done better on that video, and guess what? I'm probably going to cover the topic again down the line, and actually update the stuff that either I mean, most of us don't like blatantly get stuff wrong. It's just like small things, like, like descriptors that aren't super accurate, like Emacs being a text editor. Like, yes, it is a text editor, but it's not really a text editor. It's much more than that. And so like
Yeah.
people will get really up. It's weird, but like people will get upset that you technically got something wrong, but you could have just elaborated more and been more accurate about it. Like,
I get really annoyed about some topics like that because like especially Emacs is a good example of something that like people get very religious about, especially because like I used to make, well, I still do make content related to Vim. Like I've been using Vim for like a long time before I started using Emacs. And eventually I just kind of hit a point where I felt like I wasn't able to like learn much more about the text editor. And so I made a video talking about Emacs, and like there's so many of the comments that are like people that obviously are just trying to say that Emacs is terrible. And so like I'll talk about things that Vim genuinely does not have an equivalent to. And there are things that come close, and I usually mention them. But then people will be like, well, that's basically this. And I'm like, but it genuinely isn't, because the big difference, like for example, like a good thing is like the completion in like the command interface for Vim, like is like it's predefined. You can like define what options will be completed with it, but you can't create a new interface for that. Like it's always going to kind of look the same way, if you kind of get the idea of what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I can't change, like for example, especially in Vim, and then in NeoVim it's like slightly different, but it's basically the same sort of thing. And instead of actually like making that better, they just like people just avoid using it. Like now, like I feel like most NeoVim users like rarely use like command mode, um, which is like totally fair, you know, you do you. And so like I say, like the reason that I feel like it's not used as much is because like there isn't an equivalent to this sort of thing in Vim. And then people would be like, well, you didn't mention that this is like kind of similar, so he probably doesn't know about it. It's like, well, I did know about it. I just didn't mention it because it isn't equivalent.
Yeah, it's not the same. Like it doesn't perform the same function the way that it like the exact same way. Like it's
Yeah.
like to me, I love the fact that people will get so upset about stuff that at the end of the day. All right, look, I think you use Emacs right now, right?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Okay. I use Vim all, like not just for the most all. We have not gotten upset at all talking to each other. However, on the internet, people will rage at one another over the differences or opinion, like which one's better. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like because they both serve two totally different functions. Like Vim, there's a lot that you can do with Vim. You can extend Vim a lot. But at the end of the day, it will only ever be a text editor. Like, yeah, you can get a file browser in it, but it's not a file browser. Like you can't turn it into something else. Emacs is so heavily extensible that you can do anything in Emacs. You can.
Yeah.
Now, some would make the point that you shouldn't do anything in Emacs, which kind of may be true, but you know, again, you can. And they're to serve two different functions. And I don't understand the people who are like, it had like what you use has to be used for me. Like we have to agree. I don't understand that. Like
I feel like the biggest thing too is that it's like the appeal of it to me is something that I know isn't going to be the appeal of it to other people, and it's also not going to appeal to a lot of people that like a lot of people that use Vim are not like they don't programming isn't their day job. And it's not that I'm saying that like if you're programming during your day job with Vim or NeoVim that you're
I'm
doing
not a
something
programmer,
wrong.
and I use Vim, and I use Vim. I use Vim.
Yeah, and so it's like, but Vim or like VI as well is just like, it's like a very simple text editor and it starts up fast. And I feel like that's what like most people need. Like most people don't need this like extreme amount of extensibility. And most of the extensibility in it, like I only take advantage of it because like I just like appreciate using things that feel close to like the core of things. Which is part of the reason that I just like moved away from NeoVim, because NeoVim just feels like it's trying to like add things on top.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly the thing. Like you need more than like a basic text editor, which again, Vim is just a very good basic text editor. You can add stuff onto it and make it more than a basic text editor. But again, at that point, you're trying to fit a different task or a different workflow to a basic tech. Like you're trying to turn a program that's not suited for what you need into what you need. With Emacs, essentially, like if that's what if you need, like if you're developing on big projects, I mean big projects, and you need a lot of functionality, that's where Emacs shines. Like why wouldn't you use Emacs? But I've had conversations with people where they just don't understand that like like what I need is completely different than what they need. Like
Yeah.
I feel bad for those kinds of people because you're going to get into so many arguments that are so unnecessary. Like
Yeah.
everyone is
It's definitely
different.
like it's definitely something that it's like it. I don't know if it really would have been this bad until like I feel like not pointing fingers at anybody, but there's like some YouTubers who like basically feed off of the idea of, oh, let's say this thing is bad to spark, like, obviously they probably do think that that thing is bad because they definitely don't use it when they're talking about it.
Yeah,
And then they basically just like breed, they feed off of all of this. People like, obviously it gets a lot of views, people make content related to it, it gets likes, it gets comments, and then like, that's all good for you, but it like, in my opinion, part of it just kind of like hurts the community in
yeah,
general, having a person out there that's like fairly popular of people to watch
yeah.
just
And we all
basically.
definitely don't know who you're talking about right now. We
Yeah.
all don't know who that is.
And it's
But
like a lot of the time too, like not one of them in particular likes to make like developer advice, and they aren't a developer, and they make advice for developers,
mhm.
and their advice is like almost always like, well, sometimes the concept is very simple and it's probably like everyone would agree with it, but then they just back it up with like very inaccurate things. Anyways, I get very
Well, yeah,
triggered about this
well,
idea because it's just like,
I totally agree because it's a terrible thing. Like literally, what it is like YouTube and kind of just the online mentality is like if you can make content that is at all controversial and kind of lean into the controversial, like you will get a lot more engagement and you'll get it
yeah,
spread out like everywhere. And that's the problem. Like divisiveness should not be what fuels engagement. Like
yeah.
I shouldn't want to talk to you just because I'm pissed off at you. Like that's stupid. Like I should just want to leave a nice comment because like yeah, that's what we should do.
Yeah, I definitely
Oh,
agree. I feel like that's like, yeah,
oh, excuse
but
me.
oh well.
Yeah, I mean, people won't ever just be nice out of like just cuz. Like some will, but most people the only time you're going to leave a comment is when you're pissed off. And the sad thing
Yeah,
is that encourages that those kinds of videos. Now, the developer ones where they're giving advice on a subject that they're I see this again. I'm not going to name names or anything because I mean I'm sure I've done it at times, but it's really common for you to make a or for someone to make a video on a subject. Of course, I'm getting notifications. Awesome.
yeah. I
Um,
had to kill my notifications before this because I knew I was gonna get distracted.
Same, and of course, I don't even know how to do that. Um, oh, turn that off. Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, um, I literally that destroyed my train of thought. I have no idea where I was going with this. Shit.
People only want to talk about what they're
Oh
upset about.
yeah. Oh yeah. Like when they get upset. I I think that it fuels YouTubers to make videos on subjects that they don't know as much about and that they're only interested in. They're not hyper educated. It's not what they do, but they're interested in it and they know if they can take a even semi controversial take on it, like it will
Yeah,
just get engagement. Like I I hate it, but
honestly, I've never heard anything more accurate.
yeah, it's one of the most screwed up things. All right, I made a video that was on a NFT like game platform, and I did the video where I even said it was my first impressions of the project and their website. And back then, it was pretty much just a storefront. They were trying to sell you shit right on the front of the website. They had vague information, and the only way to really learn anything about them was to click the link to go to their Discord like group, and that's where you could learn a lot. And I made the video on like this looks very sketchy. I don't really I can't really tell anything about this project. And all of them lit me up because like, hey, you should have went to the Discord and learned it. And like we had this great back and forth, and they were great. But that video of me like making a video where the argument is, even though I did say it in the video where, look, I know nothing about this. This is a first impression. Like, even though I did say that, again, I was ignorant about what I was talking about, and it got people pissed off. That video performed 4 times better than any other video that I had posted before that. I don't understand YouTube and like the way that the online world works, where it's like we will only share shit with each other that pisses us off. Like, why?
That's actually pretty accurate. I've never thought about that.
I know.
Actually, I guess I have shared some good things, but honestly, I feel like a lot of the time when I'm sharing, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just so brutal to watch.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, you like, we all share stuff that's cool and interesting. Yes. But if you honestly thought back on it, most of the stuff that you share is because it's crazy, or like, what the hell is going on here? Like, who actually thinks this way? Like, that's what you share. And it's a sad phenomenon, because it causes, especially inside of the Linux space, where we shouldn't have that. Like, we shouldn't have that vibe. We're all different. We all like different stuff. And that's kind of what FOSS is all about. Like, you have the freedom to do and use your software the way that you see fit. The idea that we argue and bicker back and forth about which one is right is so stupid. Like, yeah. Come on. Like,
I feel like there's some things where it's like, I feel like if you're like talking about a fact, all for it. But there's like this, like, there's always like the arguments that are basically just like, I don't know. Like, they're just not going to get anywhere. Yeah. They're just kind of talking in a circle.
Well, I mean, even a lot of the facts that you consider facts are not, like, so much in the Linux space is circumstantial and opinionated at best. Like, it's just, there's not a lot of hardcore, because I mean, when you think about it, like, the best fought, like, if you try to iron down like something about the Linux space, the best in this area, or what serves the function best here, everything inside of the Linux space and FOSS, there is multiple tools to service the job. Whatever task you have, there's multiple tools to use. Yeah. So the idea that like we need to find the best one, or I found the best one, or my project's better than yours, is so dumb. Like, the idea that we argue and bicker back and forth, we got to come back to Emacs. Vim. Like, the fact that we argue and bicker about which one is the best out of the two, like, what? They're just pick one. They're both great. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? It's just whichever one you use. I know people who won't talk to somebody because they use Emacs. Like, that's crazy to me. Like,
people get very religious about it.
I know. Like, well, I mean, Emacs is one of those weird things where like there is like a church of Emacs, and people legitimately are like in that religion, which is crazy to me. Like, the fact that there are people out there who are like, yeah, I worship at the church of my text editor. It's like, brother.
It's just like the jokingly cult community.
Oh, well, there are the ones who are jokingly about it, but then there are the ones that you meet where you're like, oh, you're actually insane. Like, you genuinely like are a religious zealot about your text editor, which is fine. Like, I mean, see, here's the thing. I'll never say that you shouldn't be some type of way. I think there's a spot at the table for the nice guy and for the asshole. You know, I think there's space for everyone at the table. But it's just so, like, it seems like it takes so much effort to stay upset, like, and argue and bicker about these kinds of things. Like, isn't it just more fun to get along? Like, we all have, like, it's weird. We all at the base, like, at our like core, like foundation, believe in the same thing. Like, you should have freedom over your software, and it should be open to the public. Everyone can look at it. Beyond that, like, what really matters? Like, everything beyond that is just what you choose to use. And guess what? There's probably 50 other things I mean, even in text editors, man, there's hundreds of them bad boys. Pick any one. Like, come on.
Dude, especially like when it comes to like programming languages too, like people just do not seem to get it. And like I don't blame them because they're hearing a lot of these thoughts from the people that I was talking about before that like just want to make a statement. They've configured DWM and now they think that C is the only programming language you should ever use because I had an easy time using it.
Well,
Like,
and the thing
God,
is too is so many people like I think I think it's because Linux is so more obscure, and I think a lot of people take on this kind of insecure look like on Linux where you because Linux is so small and niche and it and you do have like such a passion for it, like you take on this like insecure mindset like where you have to defend like what you do and everything,
yeah.
so like so to the extreme. And then a lot and then when you have that kind of mindset, it's easy to go on and hear from, you know, people in the space giving their opinions, what they use and everything, and why they love them and why they think it's the best for them or to solve that task or whatever. um, when you're essentially in an insecure mind about what you're doing, and needing to defend it and everything, because someone else is using something else, or it works perfect for them.
Oh, shit.
You all good? uh
Yeah,
you,
all good. One sec, just continue.
you you end up having like this weird dynamic where you want validation from uh from others. Like you look at that YouTuber and you're like, oh, you get so upset because you're not getting like the validation uh for for using the same thing that they're, because they're using something different, because it's, you know, not what you're using, whatever. It devalues what you're doing and somehow makes what you're doing less, you know, less awesome or less cool. Your webcam does not like you today, man. And the sad part is you have a better webcam than I do. I can't hear you at all. Pulse audio. Boys, here it is at work. No.
Oh my god.
Oh, now I can hear you.
All right, well, keep talking.
Okay. Well, I mean,
I guess like I'm not.
I mean, I can hear you now. But so there was some technical difficulties. I'm gonna assume that was Pulse acting up. Hope I'm right.
Is my
there.
audio coming through now?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, that was my foot. My foot under my desk like kicked a cable, and it just like yanked things out of my laptop by accident.
I wish I could say that never happens to me.
What I was gonna say was like on the topic of like people getting like religious about things is like I feel like a lot of it, especially what we were talking about, what I was mentioning before, is like programming languages. Is I feel like a big thing too is that a lot of people in our community, kind of like you mentioned before, how like a lot of people like we know about what we use, like versus like I feel like a lot of Windows users don't know a lot about Windows and they don't need to. Versus like I feel like a lot of Linux users like pride themselves on like knowing a lot about what we use. And so when people like talk about a tool that we don't know, very much like usually that's the case, is like the people that are upset about a language don't know the language or know why it would be used or anything like that. And so like people just like feel like they have to like criticize the thing that they don't know rather than like I try, if I start to criticize something, I try to catch myself and like at least learn about it before I have like try to form an immediate opinion on it. Um, and usually that stops me from criticizing it because I eventually just go like, oh, I see a use case for this, so I guess there's like, there you go.
Well, I mean,
like once you realize that most things have a use.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the thing that you learn in the Linux space. Now, again, it's not. It takes a little time to learn, but pretty much there's no reason to criticize anything because there's someone out there that's what they want and that's what they use. That's why it exists. Like,
yeah,
and it's not like, I mean, I pretty much don't like. I mean, I criticize GNOME, but not the actual project or GNOME itself. I criticize the developers like a lot because they could stop talking a lot and just work on development, and they'd be in a lot better shape, a lot better boat. But like I never really, there's no reason for me to criticize. Like if I criticize something, I'm criticizing it in my use case, my workflow. Like for me, like I try to be good about this, but when I'm talking about stuff that's not working for me or won't work for me, it's typically for me. Like I mean that. Like I truly do mean that. Like not it won't work for you, not that it won't work for most people, but for me it doesn't work. And I don't know, it's just all too common that people take that as, oh, so it doesn't work for anybody. Like I've used it before. I'm like, man, I try my best to make it clear, but I feel like when you get that type of feedback, that's pretty much everyone who makes content has that same reaction. Like, I tried to make my point of view clear. But it's one of those things where you're never going to have the perfect interaction with somebody. I mean, sometimes you will, but you can't expect to have it.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's like just how it is.
But. And also like I feel like this is what keeps a lot of people from ever putting out videos or doing anything like this. You're never going to say the perfect thing, like ever. It's not going to happen. You'll get it pretty damn good from time to time, but you'll never get it perfect. You could have always said it better. You could have always, staged it better, been more accurate.
If you look at if you watch any of my videos, I have so many freaking cuts of my videos because I'll just be like, that wasn't right, that was wrong. And so I'll just genuinely I feel like so much. I don't know, if you watch some of them, you'll just notice there's.
Oh, I noticed there's a lot of cuts, but that's the thing. You can't ever expect someone to dive into something and get it right the first time, and especially when it comes to this the kind of videos that you're going to be making. When it comes to FOSS, you're typically going to be talking about newish topics to you.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a newish topic, trying to get it perfect is hard. And also, no one will understand, like a video creator, how much effort goes into making sure that you don't say every 5 seconds.
Oh my god, yeah.
It's the worst.
I'm so bad at it.
I say it's terrible.
That's also why I have a lot of cuts.
Trust me, I know. I've gotten to the point now where I feel like I've gotten a lot healthier about it, where I understand that some ums need to be left in there. They're a little natural. Because I used to be hyper aggressive. Pauses, everything, cuts. But then, I don't know. For me personally, I feel like it kind of makes the conversation roll better. But that being said, if I jumped back to when I first started YouTube, I wouldn't change a damn thing about how I cut out those ums, because that shit would have annoyed the hell out of me.
Oh, my first video, I just recorded it with FFmpeg. I honestly, my first video I just made because I wanted to make, I made a video on Groff, because there just wasn't, honestly, learning about it is very difficult, especially if you don't have no idea where to start. And so that's kind of why I made the video. But looking back on it, it is well, it used to be one of my bigger videos. Now it's not as big. It has 6,000 something views. But but it's terrible, genuinely. I don't know how that many people have watched it, because it's if you literally search up Groff, it's one of the first videos that comes up. And it basically is just I just have so many pauses and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, man, how do I should have just used an editor. I remember initially I went into it because especially when I first started my channel, I feel I was a lot more of what we were just talking about is terrible about some people, where I was just oh, I'm not going to use this tool. Why learn a tool when I could just use this thing that exists? So I was oh, I'll just use FFmpeg. I don't need to edit it. I'll just do it in one take. It'll be fine. Um, but then you end up with just like a lot of the people that make videos like that, there's only so much information you can give because you go any more in depth, you're gonna make a mistake, and there's no way you're gonna
Oh,
make like a 30-minute video without a single error. Like there are like YouTubers that do that and do a really good job. Like there's this guy Protozillus, who does like Emacs related content, and they're all 30 minutes long. He's like super good at doing that sort of stuff, but even then it's like it feels slow. Like I'm the sort of person who like watches his videos at like 2 times speed sometimes, at least, or like at least 1.5. And so like when I edited my videos, when I edit my videos, that's like half of what I assume people are gonna watch them like. But then I watch them over later, I'm like, wow, I sound like a freaking chipmunk in some of these because the cuts are like so close together,
well,
just talking so fast.
the sad part for me about that is I'll never be able to be that guy because I would get 10 minutes in and then say something stupid or forget my like train of thought for like a solid 15 seconds, and then I just end the recording and then start over. I would never get anywhere. There would never be a video published.
Like now when I record, because I like write out like a somewhat sort of script before I make my videos now, just because like I don't know, I found that I was more accurate when I started doing that. That's just something I like pride myself in, so why not? But now I like separate it out, and I just like will do one of the topic, like I'll say one of the things, and then I'll just like record just that, and then that way I can like record it again, and then that way I have like 3 takes of that one thing, and then I can join them all together, and then if that one turned out bad, I can do the next one or the next one.
That's a pretty smart way of going about it.
Yeah, rather than doing like one big take, because the editing takes so long if you do that. Because then you have like these like you have these times where you like say it and then you're like, "Ooh, I messed that up," and then you say it again, and then you have to like find where they like cross over.
And are you using Caden Live to edit your videos?
No, I use Blender, which I know
Okay.
like some people feel is like terrible for that.
No,
But
no. Actually, that's hilarious because me and DT were actually for everyone watching this, I actually ended up recording the DT podcast that'll be coming out after this one, and earlier this morning, and we were actually talking very very highly of the Blender video editor. It's very good. Like now we both did agree that it's a good thing that Blender did remove the game engine because they could focus on everything else.
yeah,
The game engine wasn't.
it's kind of like not very focused on.
Yeah. But the video editor, it's weird because you don't really hear almost anyone using the Blender video editor until you start talking with people who do more. I mean, obviously 3D modeling, but definitely like animation and stuff. Because
Yeah.
it's just Blender's really good for animation.
Yeah, I made like I all the stuff that's in my videos I made in Blender pretty much. Like my intro I made in Blender, my subscribe button thing is made in Blender. Because like if I'm already using it to edit videos, why not take advantage of all that knowledge that I've? Because like the nice thing about Blender is that like the key. I guess you've like used Blender before based on like how you're talking, so it's like the keys cross over. So like learning how to use like a new tool, it's like pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I mean, there are some things in Blender that you can't do, but almost
You kind of
not
just
almost yeah, like it's weird. It's like you can do more of the you can do more advanced stuff in Blender with a video editor, but at that point, especially when it comes to again advanced stuff, as far as I know, a lot of I've heard that you're going to need plugins for certain
Oh yeah.
like weird or not weird, but certain more advanced features that not everyone's going to be using in a video editor,
Yeah,
which
like there's two that are like very much like a you should be using if you're going to use the video sequencer. 100%.
you know,
If you're not doing that, then like your videos are probably just going to be quick and like simple cuts, which is like fine.
you know.
But yeah.
But then again, at that point, you could use any video editor. Like,
I think like the big advantage of Blender is it's that you can like script with it. Like you can extend it very easily. Like I have a few scripts of my own that are like very simple. And just basically I like use them to like quickly just like make sure that my video is the proper like sometimes because Blender like you have to preset how far apart it is. And you can like there's like a quick way to just say like, okay, set this as the end of my video. Otherwise it'll just like have like a long blank section of just like nothing. Or it'll like end too early. It's kind of hard to describe unless you've like used the sequencer very much.
yeah,
But
it's been a
I have
while, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I have like a setting, like a small little script that I just like load when I start Blender, and then it whenever I start it up, it just like makes a little template. It'll put like my intro in, and then when I render my video, it will like add my outro in for me, and stuff like that. And so like there's some things that I think could be better, but I think it does have quite the learning curve to do anything mildly complex, like having like text animations that are like have things like fading in. Like for example, like I have one that I keep around that like does like a title and then a subtitle and then it goes away from each other, and like getting those to like progressively fade away with like proper blurring and stuff was just like a pain.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's like it's hard to describe until you like see the setup, but it's just like a lot of work for something very simple. But at
Mhm.
least then it's like you can change it in the editor.
Yeah. And also just Blender ties so neatly together. It's a
Yeah,
good
it's really.
experience.
It's also good if you have like a stylus. Like that's what I use for editing my videos. So like
Really?
that's appeal for me. Yeah.
I-
It's really good because it's like I don't know, I just find like you can move around way faster than like I guess it's kind of similar with a mouse, but instead of like scrolling, I just find like the dragging functionality and being able to zoom in and out really quick. Like makes you like it makes the making these quick cuts like substantially nicer. Uh
Interesting. I've never thought of video editing with a stylus before.
yeah, it's pretty good. It has like its limitations in the fact that like sometimes if you need something like very accurate, I have to like zoom in more than I probably would with a mouse just because a mouse like it's not going to kind of move as you tap versus like a stylus that will happen. Your hand isn't perfectly stable.
No.
Um but I don't that's never really that big of a deal for me. I could usually cut it properly. Um but yeah, so I think Blender gets like a bad rap for this sort of stuff.
It
But
is
I
good.
especially because it used to have absolutely atrocious performance.
Mhm.
Like the video sequencer used to be bad, but now with like the most recent versions, it's pretty
It's
for like
buttery
all.
smooth. It's really good. Um, through and through. Blender is one of those programs where I genuinely cannot believe the state that it's in. Like
Yeah,
the fact that it's open source software and it is that damn good is incredible. Um,
yeah, it's crazy.
'Cause I mean, Blender has become an industry standard even compared to like Substance Painter and Substance Designer. Um, it's just better, just is.
Yeah, like I think the one reason that it isn't like it is like adopted. I think the one thing that like people don't really get about Blender, I feel like I like got really into it for a while. I made like a few like I started trying to do like more complex things like modeling and stuff. Um, and like the one thing that like you don't realize is like a lot of people say like stuff like yeah it's an industry standard, which I think is totally reasonable to think because people say that way more than they should because it's like not that I'm not trying to criticize you is what I'm
No,
trying to
no,
say
no,
because I
no.
think I've heard literally like 30 plus people like say the same sort of thing, but I think it's like the big reason that it's not like the industry standard. Like you're never going to see, well, at this rate, we're probably not going to see like any like major studios using it, but it's mostly used for its 3D modeling stuff in like things like anime and stuff because there's like small 3D sections where like most animation is done on a 2D level. And then if a studio wants to maybe add like a branch where they do 3D, like they don't want to be paying like I don't know if you've looked at like the cost of a lot of the other like rig like there because you need like multiple levels of software in your pipeline outside of it like just Blender covers like a lot more things. Like it covers sculpting versus like you do something like ZBrush for sculpting. Um, so it covers a lot of different things where you would need like a lot of other stuff, and so the cost is like really high. And if that's only going to be like in your like anime or something like that, if it's only going to be like a few minutes, maybe in your entire series it'll be like 15 minutes. Like you don't want to pay like this exorbitant amount of money,
No,
but like you're never going to see like a Pixar movie or anything like that
no, no,
probably
no,
just
no. Well, the thing is Blender is becoming more of an industry standard outside of major big production studios. Most of the production houses and you know marketing or film studios around like here in my state, almost every single one of them, Blender is part of their pipeline. Like it's
and it is used in like games. So I guess that is like
yeah.
one thing that I feel like is like still pretty common.
Yeah, and well, I mean that's most. I I was talking with an artist not too long ago, or not too long ago. few years ago, and they were telling me that there's so much in ZBrush and Substance Painter, Substance Designer that you can't get elsewhere, and now a lot of that stuff is available in Blender. It might be different or maybe not as intuitive or whatever, but that stuff is there now. And so most of the production houses and stuff that I know, especially in in the capital of my city, that's what they're the capital of my state. That's what they're all using. Um,
Mhm. Oh, that's really cool.
yeah, and it's just because for one, it makes sense at a business level. It saves you so much damn money, like
Yeah.
so much. Because Adobe will milk you dry if they can.
Yeah.
I think we all know this. Um,
Yeah.
I was looking into it, and just for me to get, I think it was I only needed I think it was $30 for me to get the Adobe suite for like Substance Painter, Substance Designer, because I was forced to get like a couple other apps with it. It's like, oh, fun. But it's again, it's not too bad, but $30 a month adds up pretty fast. That's a bit of money, and especially if you're doing uh, even if you are a small team doing a decent sized project, it just makes sense to save the money. Like
Yeah.
the extra time, it'll be worth it. You'll save more in money versus time, I guess. I
Mhm.
don't know. It
Well,
might just be
especially for things like what's it called? Like something arc. What's it called? I can't remember. Like basically like modeling related stuff. Like for like IKEA and stuff like that. Like it's pretty big for that because you could do freelance and save and spend like no money on it.
Mhm.
Which is something that like Blender does pretty well. Like I feel like most of the criticisms towards it are like still related to things like compared to like Maya, but Maya's like got some crazy. I can't remember how expensive it is. It's like
Oh, it's insane. It's like $5,000. Like, no,
yeah,
I'll pass.
yeah. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
but yeah, on another topic, are you still? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, man.
no, 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 no. You got it, man. What were you about to
I was
ask?
gonna say, are you? I was gonna say, are you still using Windows? Windows.
I am actually on. So I had left Windows 11 because OBS on Windows 11 was dog crap.
Uh,
And also my microphone on Windows 11. Like, I don't know what Windows 11 did to my microphone, but it just removed my soul from it. I sounded so hollow. And so I was having a great time on Fedora 35. However, I'm going to be doing, I'm working, there's not, I guess this will be the podcast where everyone figures out why there hasn't been videos in between the podcast of Hex and this. I am on Windows 10 right now. I had a buddy come up for one. Windows 10 is what came with this laptop, and it actually it Dell has a driver package that I don't know what special magic it's doing, but damn, is this laptop fast as shit with Windows 10. I don't know what's going on, but it is way there's an actual very noticeable performance difference on Windows 10 than any other OS that I've tried. Even Windows 11 is not really as good on it. But with that being said, the reason I'm on Windows 10 is my buddy came over with his PS5 and showed me the Matrix Awakens, which is their new. It's a tech demo using Unreal Engine 5 and MetaHuman. And I've messed around with MetaHuman. I actually know a decent amount about MetaHuman. I've worked with Unreal Engine and Unity heavily in the past, but I saw that and I was like, that is epic. The reason I'm on Windows is not because I prefer Windows or any of that. I need Windows so that I can develop on Unreal. I can technically develop using Unreal Engine 5 on Linux, but it is a way bigger hassle, and there is a
mhm.
actual performance hit on Linux versus Windows. And so I'm on Windows 10 so that I can actually develop a cool little FOSS. The project, most of the code and everything will be not most, I mean, all of it should be. But anyway, most of the project will be anything that's not literally engine specific will be open source and you'll be able to get. But I really want to make a really cool game and target it for Linux because Unreal Engine I can build and test very easily for Linux. It's just it makes developing much harder when I'm actually doing it on Linux, and I'd like to be able to pull some of the. There's not any Unreal Engine 5 cool, very graphically intense games that are being made with Linux in mind right now. And I think that would be, to me, that sounds like a very fun project. And so I'm getting started with that right now.
Nice.
So yes, I am on Windows. It's actually kind of okay. I don't really like being able to pull up my task manager and just see Microsoft spying on me. I wish they were a little bit more, not so bold with it. That'd be great. But hey,
Yeah.
whatever. It's Microsoft. They do them, and I'm just a sucker along for the ride.
That's fair, man. That's pretty cool. I've never like really given game dev like much of a I've never tried Unreal. I like originally looked at Unreal because I didn't know C# and I knew like C++ like pretty well. Like that was one of the first languages I don't know, had a decent amount of experience with. So I like looked at Unreal, but I feel like I was just like, I don't really know if I could really commit to something like learning all that.
Yeah, it's when you get into Unreal, it is genuinely fucking scary. Like I'll be the real person and tell you the way it is. Some people try and sugarcoat that shit. No, you dive into Unreal and it is terrifying. There is so many menus, so much shit because everything's visual. Like and that really comes across when you start diving into blueprints. Which when it comes to Unreal, performance wise, you will save like 5% performance using C++ compared to blueprints. But
Yeah, I don't know about
blueprints,
blueprints. Sorry, is that like the visual
visual node.
word thing? Yeah, okay.
And it's the same as scripting, but it's all visual, and it would sound like when I started getting into blueprints again, like I've always been very fluent in C#. When it comes to other things, like not nearly as much. I'm okay in Python and GD script, which is basically Python but spruced up a little bit. I don't GD script and Python are so fucking close. It's really not even an argument to talk about them. But anyway, I'm mainly fluent in C#. So like when I was getting into Unreal, at first I did want to get into C++ because it's not really recommended in Unreal for most things. Like if you're going to be doing complex, like, databases and stuff like that, it makes sense to use C++ for that. But for most of the things in Unreal, your blueprints make a lot more sense. It took me a long time to get okay with the idea of visual scripting and nodes and everything. But once you do get into it, the power of being able to see your code interact with each other visually as it goes is incredible. It's really good. There's a lot that Unreal does that I very much like. They're one of the few game engines are one of the few proprietary pieces of software out there that genuinely their licensing structure and everything I like, because it's
you don't pay for like a lot of things until you make a certain amount of money or something, right?
They game engine,
at least for Unreal, I think.
Yeah, and it's the same with Unity too. Like you don't even have to pay them anything until you're successful and you're on your feet. I like that, and that's just one of the areas where a lot of game engines. I love Godot. But the problem with Godot is it's because it's FOSS and it doesn't have the wider industry support. It can't. It's not keeping up with the other game engines, like tech wise and feature wise.
Like
which
I've heard its 3D support is still pretty like subpar right now.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I know it's got like pretty decent 2D support, but I don't know how.
The 2D is
That being
great.
said, I haven't looked at it in a long time.
The 2D is
Uh,
great. The problem with it is their 3D. Their 3D is good too. I mean, Godot has a fantastic. If you're unfamiliar with Godot at all, they have a node, like it's all nodes, like it's a node based system. Everything is a node. It's a very smart way about going about things in a game engine. The problem with it is the performance in 3D is very subpar. Um,
yeah,
they do have some support for stuff like volumetric lighting and stuff like that, but when the performance is so bad, you can't use features like that and build on more. Because also too, GD script is essentially Python. Like it's not
yeah,
Python, but it is essentially Python. And we all kind of know once you get into the hyper complex Python, or not necessarily hyper complex, but the hyper performance, the really graphical intense, that's where Python's not really made for that. It
mhm.
can do it. It can do. I'm not going to be one of those people who like Python is super slow and can't do anything. Like, no, it definitely can. Um, but they've got to find a way of like optimize the performance on 3D. Um, and then
Yeah, I
also
don't know
too,
how it
there's
handles. Go ahead.
no, you're good.
I was just gonna say, I wonder. I don't know how it handles like garbage collection and stuff. Like, I wonder. I guess supposedly Python. I don't know. Anyways, continue.
It does a decent job. I'm with you there. I don't know how. I'm with you there. I'm in the same ballpark. I don't know how well the garbage collection is on Godot, but as far as I know, it's fairly decent. Um,
Yeah, because
it's
I know like I guess it like probably doesn't do because like I think Python does like something with what's it called? Reference counting, I think is what it's called, where it like doesn't have like I don't know if you've ever used like Java or anything like that, where like you'll have like a
sadly.
big point where just like the program just stops. So I was like wondering if that happens with GD script or if it does reference counting or something. I don't know. I'd be interested to look at it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Like
but
that's one of the things that I do know that I need to do more of is understand like getting behind the scenes of Godot. Like I've used Godot and interacted with it a lot. I need to learn more about the like underlying foundations of Godot because that way I can have like real conversations about it when people bring it up. But like for me, it's just I haven't dived super in depth into Godot. I made
Mhm.
a few small projects. It's pretty nice. It's fun to. It's definitely fun to mess around with. You can definitely have a lot of fun in Godot. Uh,
Yeah.
I just don't know about
It also
trying to.
seems pretty like go ahead.
No,
I
you're
was just
good.
gonna say it seems pretty lightweight, which is kind of nice
Mhm.
compared to like a lot of the other.
I mean,
Not
yeah,
that like obviously that's not gonna matter when you're like creating a proper game.
hmm
Like if you have like good enough hardware, but I feel like I do all my work from a laptop because I'm an idiot. Um,
Hey,
but
I'm doing this on a laptop right now.
yeah,
I
but I like
am
appreciate that.
yeah, like I am the type of person I do like a desktop, but for a lot of stuff, laptops are just better. You just being able to slap it down, take it with you, and have your entire desktop experience there with you. It's
Yeah, man.
it's really nice.
I've really wanted to try because like my laptop has like Thunderbolt, and I've really wanted to try using one of those external GPUs and seeing if like some things like I don't know. The rough thing is like I think like it'd be good for some performance things, but like Blender rendering doesn't use the GPU at all for videos, which is kind of a pain.
Mhm.
Um, so that's like a pretty big hit right there. So there's not much point in there. And so like a lot of the other reasons that I'd use it is like video games, but I don't really play many video games. So that it's like I don't actually know what I'd use this for besides like if I wanted to get into like machine learning or something like that. But even
Yeah,
then, that most of that market doesn't
yeah,
intrigue.
and especially if you that Thunderbolt 3, no, it won't be limiting on
Like there
bandwidth.
is like I know that there's like bottlenecks because of like the amount of PCI
hmm
like lanes that it offers. I'm pretty sure. Like mine, I think mine is also like the because I think you can get like four, which is already less than like a normal
Yeah,
graphics card would have.
yeah, you're supposed to go on
Um,
into at a minimum of an 8x slot, but
yeah,
you can go lower than that. Yeah.
but
Um,
this one only has two. But I feel like the performance improvement would still be like I obviously wouldn't be getting like a friggin' 3080 or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'd probably just be getting like, I don't know, like probably just like an old 1080 or something like that, or even lower than that. I would mostly just want something that's like a bit better than my internal graphics, especially because like, uh, yeah, like I feel like that would be nice. But also, it's like where like on Linux, graphics performance is like kind of shitty on most things, like because
Yeah.
like most of the like encoding stuff with NVENC is like you need an NVIDIA like card, but then a lot of like the cool fun stuff I always see is like I think now like OpenCL like for like machine learning is like dead.
Yeah.
um,
Well, I
it
mean,
sounds like
it's there, but it's so underpowered compared to Nvidia.
yeah.
It's
Although I do think recently there's been like updates for like I think Blender now supports like a lot of the more like AMD equivalent to like does AMD has their own version of like the ray tracing shit that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay.
It's
So
still
I think
not
Blender now has that.
yeah, it's still not quite there with ray tracing, but it's I can't even remember what they're calling it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how good it is. I don't know what its name is. If that's
I'd be
any
interested in like getting that sort of stuff because then in theory, because like you can like load like a scene into your like video sequencer. So then in theory you could go like all out and have like a full 3D scene for things and then have that like render with your video.
hmm
Which should be sped up by a graphics card, but now I'm just thinking of like ways that I could waste my money is
Yeah,
really what I'm doing.
exactly. There you go. You just so that's our cue to go ahead and end the podcast
Yeah.
before you go ahead and talk yourself into spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars here with all of us. We'll let you do that on your own time. That way, none of us are held responsible, especially me here, where you get that $700 graphics card and you're like, "Damn it! Why the fuck did I do this? I don't need this." But thank you for being here, man. And I will definitely be hitting you up for another one of these here before too long. But with the holiday times and everything, it'll probably be a while. I'm sure all of us will be busy doing something. And also, I know a lot of us also have like you know other responsibilities like jobs and shit like
Yeah.
that. So you know but thank you for being here, man. As always, it was a good talk. It was nice to be able to have a one-on-one with you this time.
Yeah, man.
And hopefully everyone who's watching this will go down into the description, check out your links because they're fantastic. And also, I will throw up the screen now for the people who support me over on Patreon. Thank you guys. It's very much appreciated. And we will see you in the next one. Peace.
See you guys.